Right over there, the two of us, Charlie.
Yes, sir. Right.
Wagon Train didn't just roll across the prairie. It stampeded through 8 seasons, survived a star's sudden death, and became the blueprint for every ensemble drama that followed. But behind the dust and campfires, nothing went smooth. Scripts were rewritten hours before shooting. The lead actor collapsed on set and never came back. In one episode, it got so dark the network nearly pulled the plug. These are 20 weird facts about Wagon Train. And wait for the bonus, because there's a connection to Star Trek that changed television forever. Let's hitch up and ride. Number 1. Ward Bond wasn't supposed to be the wagon master. The role of Major Seth Adams was originally offered to John Wayne. After all, the entire series was inspired by John Ford's 1950 film, Wagon Master, and Wayne had worked with Ford dozens of times. He was the obvious choice, the star with the gravitas to anchor a weekly western. The network wanted him. The producers begged. They offered him creative control, profit sharing, whatever it took. But Wayne said no, not because he didn't like the concept, he loved it. He just didn't want to be tied down to a television schedule. Movies paid better, offered more freedom, and didn't require showing up every single week for 9 months straight. So the producers turned to Ward Bond, Wayne's longtime friend and frequent co-star. Bond was a character actor, not a leading man. He'd played sidekicks, villains, supporting roles for decades. But he had one thing Wayne didn't. He was available. And he was hungry. Bond took the role and threw himself into it with an intensity that surprised everyone. He didn't just play Major Adams, he became him. Gruff, commanding, larger than life. Within weeks, the crew realized they hadn't lost anything by missing Wayne. They'd found something better. A man who needed this role as much as the show needed him. Number 2. From day one, Wagon Train operated differently than any other Western on television. Most shows at the time followed the same characters week after week. Same town, same saloon, same heroes fighting the same villains. But Wagon Train was a rolling anthology. Each episode featured new passengers joining the Wagon Train with their own stories, dreams, and disasters. It was Gunsmoke meets the Twilight Zone, except on wheels. The genius of this format, it allowed the show to attract major Hollywood stars who wouldn't normally do television. Actors like Ernest Borgnine, Bette Davis, Mickey Rooney, and even a young Burt Reynolds could appear for one episode without committing to a series. They'd show up, tell their story, and disappear into the frontier. But this format also created chaos behind the scenes. Writers had to craft completely new stories every week. No recycled plots, no fallback characters. Every episode was a mini-movie with a beginning, middle, and end. The pressure was crushing. Some writers thrived, others burned out in weeks. And the guest stars, they often arrived on set without having read the full script. They'd learn their lines that morning, shoot all day, and be gone by sunset. It was television without a net, and somehow it worked. The show became one of the highest-rated programs on television, proving that audiences didn't need the same story every week. They just needed a good one. Number 3. Ward Bond was a force of nature on set, but he was also a walking time bomb. He stood 6 feet tall, weighed over 200 pounds, and had a temper that could clear a soundstage in seconds. He'd been a college football player, a John Ford regular, and a man who settled disagreements with his fists. Cast and crew learned quickly, don't cross Ward Bond. But his greatest enemy wasn't another actor or a difficult director. It was his own body. Bond had suffered a heart attack years before Wagon Train began. Doctors warned him to slow down, lose weight, take it easy. He ignored them completely. He worked 14-hour days, 6 days a week. He smoked constantly. He drank heavily between shoots. And he pushed himself harder with each passing season. As if he knew time was running out, the production schedule was brutal. Outdoor shoots in scorching heat, night scenes filmed in freezing cold, horseback riding, fight sequences, emotional confrontations. Bond never complained, never asked for a break. But by the 3rd season, people noticed changes. He looked tired. He moved slower. His breathing was labored after every take. Still, he refused to stop. And when people suggested maybe he should ease up, take a few episodes off, Bond would explode. This was his show, his role, his legacy. He'd work until the job was done. No one knew how little time he had left, not even Bond himself. Number 4. John McIntire wasn't waiting in the wings when Ward Bond collapsed. In November 1960, during the 4th season, Bond suffered a massive heart attack. He was rushed to a Dallas hotel room while on a personal appearance tour. He died hours later. He was 57 years old. The show was in the middle of production. Scripts were written with Bond as the lead. Episodes were scheduled. The network panicked. Some executives wanted to cancel the series entirely. Others suggested recasting Major Adams with a look-alike actor and pretending nothing happened. But the producers made a bold choice. They killed off the character. They didn't hide it, didn't soft-pedal it. Major Seth Adams died, and the Wagon Train needed a new leader. John McIntire, a veteran character actor who'd worked with everyone from Orson Welles to Alfred Hitchcock, got the call. He'd never seen Wagon Train, didn't know the format, barely knew who Ward Bond was. But he showed up for the meeting, listened to the pitch, and said yes. Not because it was easy money or a smart career move, because it felt right. McIntire created an entirely new character, Christopher Hale. Not a replacement, not an imitation. A completely different man with a different energy. Where Bond was aggressive and commanding, McIntire was thoughtful and measured. The transition could have killed the show. Instead, it saved it. Audiences accepted Hale immediately, and Wagon Train rolled on for 4 more seasons, proving that even after losing its star, the journey mattered more than the man leading it. Number 5. Most Western shows filmed on studio backlots with painted desert backdrops and fake sagebrush. Wagon Train refused to fake it. The producers insisted on location shooting, real landscapes, actual wilderness. They wanted dust in the actors' faces, wind in their hair, sun beating down without mercy. So, the cast and crew packed up every few weeks and headed out to remote locations across California, Arizona, Utah, and Nevada. It was authentic, it was beautiful, and it was absolutely miserable. Temperatures regularly hit over 100 degrees. There was no air conditioning, no shade, no escape. Actors wore heavy period costumes, wool pants, thick shirts, leather boots. Between takes, they'd collapse under wagons just to catch a few minutes of shade. Crew members passed out from heat exhaustion. Equipment malfunctioned. Film melted inside cameras. But the worst part wasn't the heat. It was the isolation. Some shooting locations were hours from the nearest town. If someone got injured or sick, help was far away. Medical supplies were limited to a first aid kit, and whatever the Teamsters could improvise. One actor broke his arm during a stunt and had to wait 3 hours for an ambulance to arrive over dirt roads. Another was bitten by a rattlesnake and nearly died before reaching a hospital. Yet, despite all this, the cast kept showing up. The crew kept working, because when the footage came back, it looked incredible. You couldn't fake that sky, those mountains, that sense of endless frontier. The suffering was real, but so was the magic. Number 6. Robert Horton played Scout Flint McCullough, and he hated every minute of it. On screen, he was charming, heroic, the young romantic lead. Off screen, he was furious. Horton thought he deserved better. He'd studied acting seriously, trained at prestigious schools, performed Shakespeare. He saw himself as a serious dramatic actor, not a TV cowboy. And he made sure everyone knew it. He complained about scripts. He argued with directors. He refused to do stunts he considered beneath him. Ward Bond despised him for it. The two men clashed constantly, sometimes nearly coming to blows. Bond believed in hard work, no complaints, do the job. Horton believed in artistic integrity, complex characters, meaningful storytelling. Neither would budge. The tension became so bad that producers had to schedule their scenes carefully to minimize contact. By the 5th season, Horton had had enough. He demanded out of his contract, citing creative differences. The studio let him go without a fight. They were relieved. But here's the twist. Years later, Horton admitted he regretted it. He'd walked away from steady work, good money, and a role millions loved. His film career never took off. His stage work didn't pay the bills. And Wagon Train, the show he'd looked down on, became a classic. He'd spent 5 years angry at the wrong thing. And by the time he realized it, the train had left without him. Number 7. Terry Wilson played Bill Hawks, the assistant wagon master. He wasn't a trained actor, he was a real cowboy, a rodeo rider, a stuntman who'd worked on dozens of westerns. The producers hired him because he could actually ride, actually rope, actually handle horses better than anyone else on set. They figured he'd be background, a functional character who wouldn't need many lines. But something unexpected happened. Wilson became one of the most beloved characters on the show. He had a natural, easy presence on camera. He didn't act, he just existed. And audiences connected with that authenticity. Scripts started giving him more to do, more lines, more scenes, more emotional moments. Wilson panicked. He'd never taken an acting class, never studied technique. He was terrified he'd be exposed as a fraud. So, he developed his own method. Before each scene, he'd close his eyes and imagine he was actually there, on an actual wagon train, dealing with actual problems. He didn't think about cameras or lines. He just reacted honestly. It worked brilliantly. Critics praised his naturalistic performance. Co-stars marveled at his instincts. And Wilson, the cowboy who stumbled into acting, ended up appearing in more episodes than almost anyone else. He outlasted Robert Horton. He outlasted Ward Bond. He stayed with the show from the very first episode to the very last. Not because he was the best actor, but because he was the most genuine. In a show about journeys, Terry Wilson never pretended to be anything other than himself. Number 8. The episode The Coulter Craven Story nearly got Wagon Train canceled. Guest star John Carradine played a mad doctor performing experimental surgeries on unwilling patients. It was dark, disturbing, genuinely unsettling television. The episode featured screams, blood, psychological torture. It pushed boundaries that 1950s television wasn't supposed to cross. When NBC executives saw the rough cut, they were horrified. This wasn't a Western. It was a horror film. They demanded cuts, reshoots, massive changes. The producers refused. They argued the episode was powerful, necessary, important. It showed the darkness lurking in frontier towns, the dangers of unchecked authority. The network threatened to pull it entirely. Sponsors threatened to walk. But the producers held firm with one condition. They'd air it late, after children's bedtime, with a viewer discretion warning. NBC agreed reluctantly. The episode aired in October 1960, and something remarkable happened. Viewers loved it. Critics called it groundbreaking. Letters poured in, praising the show's courage to tackle difficult subjects. The Coulter Craven Story became one of the most talked about episodes of the entire series. It proved Wagon Train could be more than just cowboys and Indians. It could be disturbing, challenging, genuinely artistic, and it set a precedent. Future episodes got darker, more complex, more willing to explore the brutality and moral ambiguity of the Old West. One episode nearly destroyed the show. Instead, it transformed it. Number 9. Frank McGrath played the cook, Charlie Wooster, and he wasn't supposed to talk. Originally, the character was designed as comic relief, who'd appear in background shots stirring pots and serving beans. No lines, no storylines, just visual texture. But McGrath had other plans. A vaudeville veteran with decades of performance experience, he started ad-libbing. Between takes, during rehearsals, he'd mutter complaints in character, grumble about the food, argue with imaginary critics. The crew loved it. Directors started letting him improvise during actual scenes. Just little moments, a word here, a reaction there. Audiences responded immediately. Mail came in asking for more Charlie Wooster. Kids loved him, adults found him hilarious. So, writers started giving him actual scenes, then actual storylines. By the 3rd season, Charlie Wooster had become an essential character, the heart of the Wagon Train. But McGrath never forgot where he started. He always arrived early to set, helped move equipment, treated every crew member with respect. He knew he'd gotten incredibly lucky. A character actor who was supposed to be scenery had become one of the show's most popular figures, and he never took it for granted. Even in later seasons, when he had featured episodes and significant screen time, McGrath would still show up to background scenes without being asked. He'd stir those pots, serve those beans, exactly like he did in the beginning. Because Charlie Wooster wasn't just a character he played, it was who Frank McGrath actually was. Number 10. The network wanted Wagon Train to be safe, predictable, family-friendly entertainment. But the show's writers had different ideas. They smuggled in controversial topics disguised as Western adventures. Episodes dealt with racism, religious persecution, domestic violence, PTSD, all subjects considered too sensitive for primetime television. One episode featured a mixed-race couple facing discrimination. Another showed a woman escaping an abusive marriage. A third explored the trauma of Civil War veterans unable to adjust to civilian life. NBC censors tried to catch these themes during script approval, but the writers got sneaky. They'd bury the controversial elements under Western tropes. A story about prejudice became a story about cattle rustlers. An exploration of domestic abuse became a mystery about a missing husband. By the time censors realized what they were watching, the episode was already filmed, already scheduled, too expensive to scrap. Sometimes the censors pushed back. They'd demand line changes, scene cuts, alternate endings. The writers would comply on paper, then shoot the scenes exactly as originally written anyway. Editors would slip the controversial footage back in during post-production, hoping no one would notice. Sometimes they got caught. Sometimes they didn't. But gradually, slowly, Wagon Train pushed television forward. It proved audiences could handle complexity, could process difficult themes, could think while they watched. The Wagon Train wasn't just crossing the frontier. It was dragging television into the future, one episode at a time, and nobody even realized it was happening. Number 11. Gene Roddenberry worked as a writer on Wagon Train, and it changed his life. Before Star Trek, before becoming a television legend, he was just another freelance writer grinding out Western scripts for hire. He sold 3 episodes to Wagon Train between 1958 and 1959. Standard frontier stories, nothing revolutionary, but something about the format stuck with him. The idea of a recurring cast traveling through new territory each week, encountering different cultures, different conflicts, different moral dilemmas. It was exploration. Not of space, but of America's past and human nature itself. Years later, when Roddenberry pitched Star Trek to networks, he called it a Western in space. The USS Enterprise was a wagon train. The weekly planets were frontier towns. Captain Kirk was the wagon master, leading his crew into the unknown. Network executives didn't understand science fiction, but they understood Westerns. They'd seen Wagon Train dominate ratings for years. So, when Roddenberry said his show was basically Wagon Train among the stars, they got it immediately. Star Trek was greenlit partly because Wagon Train proved the format worked. The anthology structure, the exploration theme, the moral complexity. Roddenberry didn't invent it. He translated it. And in doing so, he created one of television's most enduring franchises. All because a Western on NBC showed him the template. The connection runs deeper than most people realize. Without Wagon Train, there might never have been a Star Trek. Number 12. The horses were treated better than the actors. Wagon Train employed a full-time veterinarian, but didn't have a medic for humans until the 2nd season. The studio spent thousands on climate-controlled horse trailers, specialized feed, and professional trainers. Meanwhile, actors changed costumes in cramped trucks and ate whatever catering could scrounge up. It wasn't neglect, it was priority. Horses couldn't be replaced mid-shoot. If a trained animal got injured or sick, production stopped entirely. The insurance costs alone meant the studio couldn't afford to lose a horse. But actors? They were replaceable. Guest stars came and went weekly. Even regulars could be written out if necessary. Ward Bond joked about it constantly. He'd point to the horses cooling off under misters while he sweated through his 3rd shirt of the day. But he understood the reality. Those animals were performing dangerous stunts, carrying actors for hours, working in extreme conditions without complaint. They earned their luxury accommodations. Still, the disparity was obvious. One horse had its own handler, custom saddle, and daily health checkups. Meanwhile, Terry Wilson once worked 3 days with a broken toe because the production couldn't afford to lose him for a doctor's visit. It became a running gag on set. If you want good treatment, be born a horse. But underneath the jokes was truth. Television production in the 50s was brutal, and humans were expected to endure it. Number 13. The final episode with Ward Bond was filmed weeks before he died, but nobody knew it would be his last. Production wrapped normally. Bond shook hands with the crew, made plans for the next season, drove away from the lot like it was any other Friday. Then he went on a promotional tour and never came back. When news of his death reached the set, filming shut down for 3 days. The cast and crew were devastated. But the studio faced a crisis. They had episodes in various stages of completion. Some featured Bond heavily, others barely at all. Do they air them, shelve them, reshoot? The decision was made to air everything as filmed, No reshoots, no edits, no special tributes. Just let Ward Bond's final performances speak for themselves. When those episodes aired, viewers had no idea they were watching a dead man. He looked healthy, strong, commanding as ever. There was no sense of goodbye, no final farewell. He was just there, doing his job, leading the wagon train like he'd always done. Then he was gone. The show addressed his death in a later episode, after John McIntire had taken over. They didn't show it. They didn't dramatize it. Someone simply said Major Adams had died and the train kept moving. Because that's what wagon trains did. People died on the frontier. Life continued. The journey didn't stop for anyone. Number 14. Robert Fuller replaced Robert Horton, and nobody could tell them apart at first. When Horton left, the show needed a new scout. Fuller came in as Cooper Smith, young, handsome, good with a gun. The similarities were intentional. Same age range, same physical type, same romantic appeal. The studio was basically replacing Horton with Horton 2.0. But Fuller refused to be a clone. He studied Horton's episodes and deliberately did everything differently. Where Horton was smooth and polished, Fuller was rough and impulsive. Where Horton played educated and refined, Fuller played instinctive and raw. He changed his walk, his voice, his entire energy, and it worked. Within weeks, fans accepted Cooper Smith as his own character. Letters came in, praising the change. Critics noted Fuller brought a different dynamic to the show. The irony? Fuller and Horton were friends in real life. They'd worked together before, shared an agent, socialized at the same parties. When Fuller got the call about Wagon Train, he called Horton first to ask permission. Horton gave his blessing immediately. No hard feelings, no rivalry. He'd left voluntarily. He wanted Fuller to succeed. And Fuller, out of respect for that friendship, made sure he wasn't just replacing Horton. He was honoring him by being completely different. Two actors who looked alike created two completely distinct characters, and Wagon Train was better for it. Number 15. The show was sponsored by Ford Motors, and they controlled everything, not just commercial content, story content. Ford executives read every script. They approved every vehicle shown on screen. They had final say over which actors could be hired. Their reasoning? Wagon Train was one of the highest-rated shows on television. Millions of people watched every week. That kind of exposure was worth millions in advertising. So, Ford wasn't just buying commercial time. They were buying influence. In one episode, a character was supposed to ride a horse that kept bucking. Ford demanded a rewrite. They didn't want viewers associating their brand with unreliable transportation. The bucking horse became a sick horse. Problem solved. In another episode, a wagon broke down due to poor construction. Ford had it changed to vandalism. Can't suggest faulty manufacturing. The writers learned to work around it. They'd submit scripts knowing Ford would make changes and preemptively adjusted their stories. It was censorship, but subtle. Not political or moral, commercial. The show became a weekly Ford advertisement disguised as entertainment, and it worked brilliantly. Wagon Train viewers bought Fords in massive numbers. The company's market share grew throughout the show's run. By the time the series ended, Ford had established itself as the American brand, not through flashy commercials, but through quiet, persistent association with wholesome family entertainment, smart advertising disguised as sponsorship. Number 16. Michael Burns joined the cast at age 16, playing teenage orphan Barnaby West. He'd been a child actor, working steadily since age 6. He thought he knew how television worked. He was wrong. Wagon Train's schedule was brutal for adults and crushing for a teenager. Burns had to balance schooling with shooting. California law required 3 hours of education daily for minor actors. So while the crew filmed exterior scenes, Burns sat in a trailer with a tutor doing algebra. Then he'd rush to set, film for 6 hours, return to the trailer for more homework. No friends his age. No normal teenage experiences. Just work, study, sleep, repeat. By the second season, Burns was exhausted. He started forgetting lines, missing cues, showing up late. The producers pulled him aside. They didn't yell. They explained the reality. Hundreds of people depended on this show for their income. If he couldn't handle it, they'd replace him. Burns never missed another cue. He worked harder, studied scripts at night, sacrificed everything for the role, and it paid off. Barnaby West became a fan favorite, the emotional heart of later seasons. but the cost was high. Burns later said he lost his childhood to Wagon Train. No regrets exactly, but no illusions either. He'd been a working professional. At an age when most kids worried about homework and prom dates, the show made him successful. It also made him old before his time. Number 17. The show's most dangerous stunt wasn't planned. During a river crossing scene, a wagon was supposed to roll safely into shallow water. Simple shot, low risk. But someone miscalculated the current. The moment the wagon entered the water, it was swept downstream, then flipped. Actor Denny Miller was thrown into the rapids, weighed down by period costume and boots. Stuntmen dove in immediately, but the current scattered everyone. For 30 seconds, nobody could find Miller. Crew members ran along the bank. Cameras stopped rolling. Someone screamed for help. Then Miller surfaced 50 yards downstream, choking and disoriented but alive. He'd hit his head on a rock, but managed to grab a fallen tree branch. They pulled him out, rushed him to a hospital. Mild concussion, bruised ribs, water in his lungs. He was back on set 3 days later. The studio investigated and implemented new protocols. Water scenes now required professional safety divers, multiple rescue boats, detailed current assessments. The footage still exists in the archives. They never aired it, but they kept it as a reminder. Television might be make-believe, but the dangers were absolutely real. Number 18. The final season struggled to find its identity. John McIntire was still leading the train, but the show felt different. Network programming had changed. Westerns were falling out of favor. Science fiction, spy shows, and modern dramas were taking over prime time. Wagon Train suddenly felt like a relic. Ratings dropped. The network cut the budget. Episodes that once filmed on location now shot on studio backlots with obvious fake backgrounds. Guest stars weren't major film actors anymore. They were television regulars looking for work. The scripts became simpler, safer, less ambitious. Everything that made Wagon Train special was slowly being stripped away. The cast knew it was ending. They could feel it in the reduced shooting schedules, the cheaper production values, the network's lack of promotion. But they kept working, kept trying to maintain quality. The final episode, aired May 2nd, 1965, was low-key. No special event, no finale movie, just another Wagon Train story. The train reached its destination. People said goodbye. The camera pulled back, showing the wagons disappearing into the distance. Then it was over. 8 seasons, 284 episodes, countless journeys. Done. No fanfare, no retrospective, no celebration. Just silence. Television had moved on. The Western was dying. And Wagon Train, one of the shows that defined the genre, rolled quietly into history. The frontier had closed. And this time, nobody was coming back. Number 19. Ward Bond's ghost haunted the show until the very end. Not literally, but his presence never left. Scripts still referenced Major Adams years after his death. New characters would mention him in passing, recall his decisions, compare current situations to his leadership. John McIntire encouraged it. He never wanted people to forget Bond or feel like he was trying to erase the show's history. During cast parties, someone would always toast Bond, share a story, remember a moment, keep him alive in memory. Terry Wilson kept a photo of Bond in his trailer throughout all remaining seasons. Frank McGrath wore one of Bond's old bandanas during filming, said it brought him luck. The crew maintained traditions Bond had established. Same coffee brand in the catering truck, same call time every morning, same ritual of gathering before the first shot of each episode. It was tribute and superstition mixed together. And it worked. Bond's spirit, his intensity, his commitment, it lingered. Future cast members who'd never met him felt his influence. They'd hear stories, see old episodes, understand what he'd built. Wagon Train survived his death, but it never forgot him. Some shows are bigger than their stars, others are defined by them. Wagon Train was both. It rolled on without Bond, but his ghost rode shotgun every mile. Number 20. The show's legacy is bigger than most people realize. Wagon Train pioneered the anthology Western format that influenced dozens of future shows. It proved television could handle complex storytelling, multiple narratives, and serious themes. It launched careers, established actors, created a template that's still used today. But its greatest achievement might be what it represented. For 8 years, Wagon Train told stories about people moving forward, facing hardship, building something new. It was optimistic without being naive, dramatic without being depressing. It showed America at its best and worst, its courage and cruelty, its dreams and failures. And it did it every week without fail. The show ended in 1965, but its influence never stopped. Every ensemble drama, every show about a journey, every series that features different stories within a recurring framework owes something to Wagon Train. Star Trek, The Love Boat, even modern shows like The Walking Dead. They all use elements Wagon Train perfected. The format, the structure, the idea that the journey matters more than the destination. That's Wagon Train's gift to television. Not fame, not awards, not even massive ratings, but proof that stories about people moving forward together, despite everything, will always matter. The Wagon Train reached its destination in 1965, but somehow, it never really stopped rolling. Bonus fact: the original Wagon Train pilot was completely different from what aired. It featured different actors, a darker tone, and a controversial storyline about religious persecution that networks deemed too risky. The producers reshot nearly everything, softened the themes, and recast several roles including Ward Bonds. That rejected pilot sat in a vault for decades until a film historian discovered it in the 1990s. When compared to the aired version, the differences are stunning. The original was grittier, more violent, more explicitly political. It wouldn't have lasted one season. Sometimes the version that gets rejected is the one that would have failed anyway. The Wagon Train we remember, the show that ran 8 years and changed television, that almost never happened. One executive's decision to demand reshoots saved everything. Pure luck disguised as good judgment. And somewhere in an archive, there's an alternate universe version of Wagon Train that never found its audience, never influenced Star Trek, never became a classic. Just another failed Western pilot gathering dust, while the real show rolled into history.